Gollum killed Frodo's parents. While the official story in the Shire is that Drogo and Primula drowned in a tragic boating accident, dark rumors suggested Primula tried to push Drogo in, and he pulled her with him. However, a compelling theory suggests Gollum was the real culprit while hunting for Shire and Baggins. Proponents argue that Gollum, a creature of the water, likely came across their boat on the Brandywine River and mistook Drogo Baggins for Bilbo. After realizing neither had the ring, he would have fled the area, explaining why Tolkien chose to open the books with a dialogue about the mysterious nature of their deaths. The Eagle Plan was the real strategy all along. This theory posits that Gandalf never intended for the Fellowship to walk all the way to Mordor, but instead planned to meet the Eagles at a secret rendezvous point in the northern Misty Mountains. He kept this plan a total secret to prevent Sauron's spies from catching on, which is why he was so reluctant to enter Moria. When he fell against the Balrog, his famous last words, "Fly, you fools," weren't just a command to run, but a desperate, literal instruction to use the eagles for the rest of the journey. Because he died and returned with a fractured memory as Gandalf the White, he forgot the original plan until he finally called them to rescue Frodo and Sam at the very end. Gollum is a separate entity living inside the ring. Rather than being a simple split personality caused by isolation and trauma, this theory argues that Gollum is a sentient identity belonging to the One Ring itself. Yes, supporters point out that anyone who possesses the ring for long enough, like Bilbo or Frodo, begins to exhibit the same snarling, obsessive traits and speech patterns as the creature Smeagol. This would mean that the Gollum personality is essentially a domineering mask the ring uses to consume its bearer's soul. If Smeagol had never found the ring, the entity we know as Gollum simply wouldn't exist. The Hobbit trilogy is exaggerated because Bilbo is an unreliable narrator. Many fans struggled with the over-the-top CGI and impossible physics of the Hobbit films, but this theory explains it away as Bilbo Baggins' own embellishments. Bilbo has a documented history of correcting his stories or telling them otherwise, as he admitted at the Council of Elrond. Since the films are technically his memoir, things like the barrel sequence or the golden statue of Smaug are just tall tales told to entertain the youngsters of the Shire. It turns a cinematic train wreck into a brilliant piece of character-driven world building. Tom Bombadil is one of the nameless things from Moria. Frodo once asked Tom who he was, and his cryptic answer was that he is nameless and the eldest, existing before Sauron or even the first raindrop. This matches the description of the ancient creatures gnawing at the roots of the world deep beneath Moria, who are also described as nameless and older than Sauron. Just because these things dwell in the dark doesn't mean they are all evil. Tom might simply be a Holy Spirit version of these primordial entities. His immunity to the ring's power suggests he belongs to an order of existence that the ring simply cannot comprehend. Tom Bombadil is actually the Witch King. This wild accusation stems from a few eerie coincidences in the Fellowship of the Ring, such as Tom having a glint in his eye when the Black Riders are mentioned. More importantly, Tom can see Frodo clearly while he is wearing the One Ring, a trait only shared by powerful servants of Sauron or Sauron himself. When Tom puts the ring on his own finger, it has zero effect, which mirrors how the ring wouldn't truly bother someone already fully aligned with its master. If true, it would mean Frodo was unknowingly hosted by his greatest enemy for an entire weekend. By the way, if you guys like movie content like this, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks. Gandalf is actually Eru Ilúvatar. As the monotheistic creator of Middle-earth, Eru usually stays out of physical history, but this theory suggests he manifested as Gandalf to guide the defeat of Sauron directly. On the bridge of Khazad-dûm, Gandalf identifies himself as a servant of the secret fire, which refers to the flame imperishable, a power that is said to stay only with Eru. While he claims to be a servant, his resurrection and the fact that he seems to possess knowledge beyond any other Maya suggests he might be the top dog of the universe in a humble disguise. It reinterprets his entire mission as the creator personally walking beside his children. Gandalf isn't actually a wizard, but a high-level fighter. Fans of RPG mechanics argue that while Gandalf looks like a wizard, his actual use of magic is shockingly subpar compared to his sword skills. He defends Minas Tirith with Glamdring rather than spells, and he defeats the Balrog by using physics to break a bridge rather than blasting it with an enchantment. Even Saruman mops the floor with him when it comes to actual magical combat, suggesting Gandalf is a warrior who uses a staff as a prop. He essentially hoodwinked all of Middle-earth into following his wisdom, while he he carried the team with hard knocks and heroics. The old man in Fangorn was Radagast the Brown. In the books, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli spot a mysterious old man with a wide-brimmed hat lurking near their campfire, who then vanishes without a trace. While Gandalf later implies it was Saruman, this theory points out that Saruman is never described as wearing a hat, whereas Radagast always does. If it was the Brown Wizard, it would mean he was far more active during the War of the Ring than we ever realized. He was likely shadowing the orcs to ensure the hobbits survived, acting as a hidden guardian of the forest. Radagast didn't fail. He was a secret protector of the North. Most scholars and even Tolkien himself suggested Radagast failed his mission because he became too enamored with nature. However, this theory argues that Radagast setting up shop right next to Dol Guldur was a strategic move to directly confront Sauron's power in the Mirkwood. By working with animals and nature, he may have prevented Sauron from using the forest as a staging ground for a massive northern invasion. While without his influence, the free humans in the Anduin Valley might have been wiped out, meaning the Orlingas would have never ridden south to save Gondor. Grima Wormtongue was a cannibal who ate Lotho Sackville Baggins. At the end of the novels, Saruman taunts Grima for stabbing Lotho in his sleep, but he adds a chilling detail: Worm has been very hungry lately. Fans believe this is a direct hint that Grima actually consumed the body of the hobbit he killed. This extreme act of desperation and depravity would explain why Grima finally snapped and murdered Saruman in the final moments of the story. It turns a wretched character into something even more horrific, emphasizing the complete moral collapse of those who served Isengard. Saruman was attempting to turn Wormtongue into an orc. Beyond the cannibalism theory, some believe Saruman's abuse of Grima was actually a dark experiment in biological warping. After successfully creating the Uruk-hai, Saruman may have been trying to see if he could reverse engineer a human into a new breed of orc. This would explain Grima's pale, waxy skin and his increasingly animalistic behavior throughout the final chapters. It's a chilling thought that suggests if the war had lasted longer, Saruman would have replaced his human spies with a legion of warped, human-born monsters. Grima Wormtongue possessed a secret ring of power. Throughout the trilogy, Saruman is described as having an intense interest in ring lore, even calling himself Saruman Ringmaker. This theory suggests he successfully forged his own rings and gave one to Grima to ensure his total obedience. And this would make him Grima the Ringworm, a puppet controlled by a magical tether he couldn't escape. It explains why a man of his intellect would remain so loyal to a master who openly despised and abused him until the very end. Samwise Gamgee is the true hero of the story. While Frodo carried the physical weight of the ring, Sam is the one who fought Shelob single-handedly and carried Frodo up the slopes of Mount Doom when he could no longer walk. Tolkien himself explicitly called Sam the chief hero of the entire legendarium in his private letters. Furthermore, Sam is the only one who willingly gave back the ring after bearing it, showing a level of resistance even greater than Frodo or Bilbo. The theory suggests that without Sam's mental and physical strength, the quest would have failed at a dozen different points. The One Ring is a sentient and sapient being. This isn't just a figure of speech. The theory argues the ring possesses actual consciousness and the ability to think and act. Gandalf himself noted that the ring looks after itself and decided to leave Gollum because he was too small and mean to help it get back to Sauron. It can control its own size to slip off fingers or become tight, and it actively betrays its bearers like a Isildur to avenge its maker. It is essentially another character in the story, operating with a malicious will independent of its creator. Tom Bombadil is the personification of the music of the Ainur. This theory attempts to explain Tom's constant singing and his total power over the old forest. In the beginning, the world was created through a great music, and Tom might be the literal echo of that creation still walking the earth. This explains why his songs are stronger songs that can command ancient spirits and trees. He is speaking the very language of reality itself. It would also explain why he is the eldest, as he would have been present from the moment the first note of the universe was struck. The Lord of the Rings is a massive Christian allegory. Despite Tolkien's public dislike of allegory, he admitted in private letters that the work is fundamentally religious and Catholic. The theory identifies three distinct Christ figures in the story: Gandalf as the prophet, Frodo as the priest, and Aragorn as the king. Each character undergoes a symbolic death and resurrection, such as Gandalf falling in Moria and returning in white. Even the destruction of the ring on March 25th matches the traditional date of the crucifixion, signaling the defeat of earthly evil through a messianic sacrifice. Gimli's request for Galadriel's hair was a masterstroke of diplomacy. On the surface, asking for 3 hairs seems odd, But in elven history, the Great Lord Fëanor asked for a single strand 3 times, and was denied because Galadriel saw the darkness in his heart. By saying yes to a dwarf, Galadriel was declaring that Gimli's heart was purer than that of the greatest elf lord who ever lived. This act was the opening gesture of reconciliation between two races that had hated each other for ages. It turned a cute moment into the most significant political event of the Third Age. The Eye of Sauron is purely a metaphor. In the films, Sauron is a literal flaming eyeball on top of a tower, but the books suggest he actually has a physical form with 4 fingers on the black hand. The eye is meant to represent his far-seeing will and perception, enhanced by the Palantir rather than his actual body. Peter Jackson admitted struggling with how to depict a non-physical presence and chose the literal eye for cinematic impact. This theory argues that Sauron was actually sitting in Barad-dûr as a man-like figure, projecting his searching eye through a magical means. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is a direct sequel to LOTR. This theory maps out incredible links between the two stories, starting with the Seven Dwarfs matching the 7 rings given to the Dwarf Lords. The magic mirror is interpreted as a lingering piece of Sauron's power, or a dark version of the Mirror of Galadriel. Furthermore, the prince is theorized to be a returned Gandalf, checking in on the state of Middle-earth centuries later. Even the names of the Disney dwarfs line up with the Norse translations Tolkien used for his own characters, suggesting the House of Mouse owns a hidden corner of Arda. Treebeard is a personification of nature and moral conduct. As the oldest living thing in Middle-earth, Treebeard is more than just a talking tree. He is a shepherd of the forest who embodies the 4 cardinal virtues of prudence, justice, temperance, and courage. He shows extreme restraint, on refusing to act in haste, which mirrors the medieval allegorical tradition, where nature acts as a guiding moral force. When the Ents finally march on Isengard, it isn't just a battle, it is nature itself, delivering a final judgment on the destructive, machine-wielding philosophy of Saruman. He is the land's living conscience, existing to train and teach the world how to survive.